A bitter dispute that escalated into a skirmish between protesters and police in Memphis, Tennessee. These dramatic scenes were filmed just recently when demonstrators tried to cover the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, a former slave trader, Confederate general and suspected leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Tammy Sawyer organized the protest with the support of Danielle Inez, a young leader of the Democratic Party in Memphis. They both find the sight of General Forrest still staring down at them unbearable.
This structure of Nathan Bedford Forrest needs to be removed because it represents a hateful ideal that black people are not equal to white Americans. And knowing the beliefs of Nathan Bedford Forrest, it should not stand in a city that is majority African American.
Memphis City Council, which is dominated by the Democratic Party, voted to remove the statue 2 years ago. But the Tennessee State Legislative in Nashville disagreed. The Republican majority there passed a law that placed hurdles in the way of anyone wanting to get rid of Confederate monuments.
So we have to get a 2/3 majority vote from a special committee that's in place in Nashville. But in order to get a hearing, we have to make sure we notify every single person who might have a vested interest in that statue. And if we go to the state and say, hey, these are the people we've notified, if they come back and say, oh, you missed one, we have to start back over from square one.
It's complicated. This is in fact not only a memorial to General Forrest, it's also his grave. Nathan Forrest and his wife are buried right here under the statue, which makes it even more difficult to simply remove it. But besides this particularity, there are many here in the United States who are opposed to the removal of such monuments to the Confederacy on principle. One of them is President Trump, who recently tweeted, "It's sad to see the history and culture of our country ripped apart." And according to the latest polls, a majority of Americans actually agree with him. Like Mark Buchanan. He is a member of an organization called Sons of Confederate Veterans. The group is dedicated to preserving Civil War sites such as this former military outpost and to honoring the memory of those who fought for the South.
I can understand that people are offended by these statues, but it's important to remember that it's much more complicated than that. These men came back home after the war and helped rebuild the country.
For Buchanan, monuments to Confederate heroes are part of America's heritage and not racist statements. Still, the debate has the potential to open old wounds in race relations, in Memphis of all places, where civil rights icon Martin Luther King was murdered in 1968.
I think they should take it down. Things like that are not really indicative of what our country represents today, so they should take it down and put it maybe in a museum where history belongs.
Our history is what this country's based on, how it's began. And, I don't think someone should terrorize or tear down or destroy things that are part of, what we stand for.
Meanwhile, Tammy Sawyer and her fellow activists are already planning new protests, and they are optimistic that in the end, they will prevail.
We're approaching the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and I believe that the city and the state have too much invested in the recognition and celebration of that for these structures to continue to stand. The optics there are just, not good, and so I believe that we're on the right side of history with that.
There is clearly no consensus here in Memphis or elsewhere in the United States on what to do about those monuments to the Confederacy. What is heritage? What is provocation? And where do you draw the line? This debate is bound to continue all over the country for many years to come.